When I say General Hospital, 42, Barney Miller, what comes to your mind? I know what comes to my mind. A blessing of a man, Mr. Max Gail. Max, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm blessed to be here with you. So yes, we've known each other a long time.
Yeah,
we don't really hang out. We haven't talked in a long time, but we've always, I think, recognized each other, recognizes as kindred spirits, you know. And you know, I see you as a warrior.
Oh, well, you know, it's interesting how life goes on, and we seem to connect to those people, like-minded people. Mm-hmm. And you have so much in your life. You stand for so much, and even you have a production company that does documentaries that are so needed in this world right now.
Well, I formed a production company in 1980 to carry out a particular project that I had in mind, or it was an idea, really. And part of that idea was that at that time we were doing Barney Miller. This goes back in TV time to when there were like three networks and PBS, right?
Right.
And then there was a certain couple of times in the early evening and later evening that the networks had to give over their feed, you know, to the local stations, and that would be the local news.
Right.
And between 7 and 8, the primetime access. So those were times where other stations could then syndicate TV shows that were on. So Barney Miller became big for the people that didn't like to watch network TV. You know, that's why they watched these other things. So all that was going on. And at the same time, the networks, Johnny Carson kind of owned the after 11:30, after the 11 o'clock news.
Yeah.
It went back to the network. Johnny Carson owned that territory pretty much. Mm-hmm. And ABC would try to put again one of their big TV show, you know, reruns. And in those days, the networks couldn't own a show. They could only license it for 2 showings. So if they showed Spencer for Hire and nobody watched it, you know, they kind of threw that money down the drain. So they were having trouble with that. And they would come over and watch us tape Barney Miller, because we taped at night without an audience. And it was just a kind of vibe. And we were their grown-up show. You know, A-Team was #1. Yeah. We were usually around 10 or 11. But we got the Peabody Award and so on and so forth.
Right.
And I would use that time to pitch them that if there was a show that was kind of like whatever Saturday Night Live was to whatever was going on in that time before, you know, they're not quite ready. There was, I thought, a way to do something that was kind of like Charles Garrault, in that it involved being out and traveling, and I called it docu-musical, you know. So it's kind of following stories and stuff that were going on out in the world where I was seeing it, you know, and now that portable video was just showing up, you know, and the 1/2-inch stuff wasn't in the stores yet, but was being seeded out through camera people. So I felt there was a way to actually share what I was experiencing as I was doing this at the time popular sitcom. You know, I mean, we were still people saw it every night, and the people that liked it really liked it, and it was smart humor. But I was finding myself kind of following my own musical path that led me to Buffy St. Marie and getting to know a whole lot of people in the American Indian movement that I'd been watching from my first acting gig, which was in the stage play of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, wow. What role did you play?
I played the chief in a production in San Francisco where they made the play more like the book. And at that time, there was an occupation of Alcatraz Island. The federal government had said, we're leaving it. And people were arguing it should be a condo, it should be a gambling casino, it should be a park, you know? And a bunch of Indians said, well, there's a treaty that says when the federal government abandons lands, it goes back to the original owners, so it should be ours, you know? So, and then I did the play in New York while the Wounded Knee occupation. I realized that many of the people listening to this is, you know, for younger people today, this would have been like Standing Rock at the time. It was a time when something went on and it certainly involves some conflict and with law enforcement and things around that, you know, but underneath it or within the center of it was a larger understanding of who we all are as humans and what's gone on here in this country. And, you know, so for me, that was, you know, a connecting place. And for me, and just in my own growth, you know, my spiritual growth, understanding, you know, what it is about life and the world, that whatever religion you grow up in, sometimes that provides you with a way. Sometimes you got to turn away from it. Sometimes whatever, at some point you begin to realize, well, there's something very real. It's kind of larger than all of that. It's bigger than any one of those, but any one of those can be a way to connect, you know, or a way to separate. And that's sort of what that process was for me. And then the show ended. For the network, it was like, because I had made it kind of an agreement with them, you know, but for the network, it was like, they thought maybe this John Denver had just done a piece on polar bears. Well, if I'm rambling too much, I'm just loving telling you this story.
No, I love this. I mean, it's wonderful, you know, how it shows how you could be on a hit series and doing your stuff there, but you also have so much other stuff going on at the same time.
Well, and there's a whole lot that comes with that you go, no, well, you know, people, you find you're sort of being identified and described in a sort of a groove that's there for actors who get a new series, you know, kind of who you are and what it's all about, what makes that story. And go, wait a minute, no, none of this is, you know, especially when I started connecting in with an awareness, not just spiritually, but, you know, like I was an economics major and I got an MBA, and I went from real nerd sort of, you know, science, you know, arced over into sort of social sciences or whatever. But
I read that. How is that shift? How is that shift from going to geeky nerd kind of thing to an actor?
Well, part of it was just what could I actually do? You know, I mean, I went to a small liberal arts college in Massachusetts called Williams College. They had a deal that you could go 3 years there and 2 years to MIT, and you'd get a BA and a BS. And for me at that time, you know, that was the time when Sputnik, the Russians launched Sputnik, and now the pressure was on. So every young man was being, you know, pushed to go down the science route, which I was better at anyway. And that just, it seemed like a really good explanation for why I would go to this school, you know. But I learned the difference, you know, between the guys with 800 in their math boards and me with my 7-something, you know what I mean? Just in terms of the ones who had been to private schools and already had a year or two of calculus. And for me, you know, and then I worked a summer gig that let me know it was a research gig at Ford Motor Company, you know, and I just knew that I didn't have that particular in me. The part of it, the quantum physics, the way chemistry all worked together, the way all of that I loved, you know, but I was not going to. So as I say, I arced over into economics, and you know, and for me, all along, even my choice to go to that school had more to do with music than it had to do with all of that bullshit. You know?
So you sort of went to something that lit your fire more.
I kept trying to find, you know, but also I was learning I couldn't fake it. I couldn't cover it. I couldn't just perform on a certain level with things that I was not for me, you know. So ultimately, you know, this part opened up in the production of Cuckoo's Nest in San Francisco, and I was kind of my piano bar gig at the Hyatt House. You know, I got replaced by a guy with a big Renaissance collar, high, you know, Renaissance fair type shirt and a guitar and a tanny from the marina. They replaced me in the 5 to 9 slot, you know, and all of a sudden I was doing this, you know, so I found that, and, you know, but anyway, see, with Barney Miller, all of that, you know, that wrapped up. Right. It was just too sort of radical for what you know, once we weren't doing the show anymore. Once we had decided that, well, then we were, you know, who were you guys, you know? And I got married and I had a child, And when our daughter was 8 months old, we found out that my wife had colon cancer, which of course was not our first choice, you know, and she passed a couple years later, and I became a single mom, which I learned to say it because I was ready to be a dad. I was in my early 40s, but I really was clueless to what moms come up with.
Right.
And although I did my best, it was, you know, my daughter India, who's very strong and wonderful, and now 38 with 4-year-old twins. But
Oh,
you know, so I went through, you know, those times, and time came I remarried, and I thought maybe I should go back to work
yeah.
and, you know, and see what, and I did a show with Frank Zappa's two oldest kids, Moon and Dweezil. I thought it was a wonderful concept, and I loved them, but it was the network, for the network, it was more like Dweezil's another Kirk Cameron, who was the teenage star that emerged on, you know,
Yeah.
and Moon sort of along for the ride. I mean, they did really not have writers or people who understood the nuance of these kids, their own particular upbringing.
Right.
You know, so that was the
They were
season
trying
where,
to put them in another box.
yeah, that they thought they could make a lot of money with, you know, and I think you know, that season of Retreat TV guide, the sort of the season opening article was about the Simpsons versus the Cosbys. You know, and Simpsons, of course, you know, that whole thing. Of course, it all, there's an irony to all of that now.
Yeah.
But in a way, and so their vision was, this is kind of like more like in the middle, or more like a whole other take on family life and principles, and whether you're a slacker or a creator or whatever, you know. And it was a wonderful idea, you know, but it didn't really materialize in a way, and it left me feeling like, why did I think I needed to do that again? Why do I think I need to go back to TV or even acting, you know?
Right.
And right around that time, somebody, well, we got a computer in our family.
Yeah.
We got, you know, a computer and got on America Online because the browser hadn't been really developed yet. Well, it was in college in Illinois, but it hadn't become the Netscape browser. Right. So people could get on the web. The World Wide Web existed, and people were using it different ways and exploring up in the Bay Area with the WELL, the Whole Earth Electronic Link. And say, what happens if we bring the cost down? And people, by golly, people start interacting with each other, not just exchanging scientific papers and stuff, which is why Tim Berners-Lee created it, you know. So it was that time, and I remember, you know, the kids are going, "Come on, Dad, pick a name, Come on, let's get on, you know." And thinking, wow, as I saw what was there, this is a chance, and I was not alone in this time, you know, for us to have a better conversation as a species,
yeah,
you know, with each other. And you know, we didn't foresee shucks.
Oh,
Somebody's calling in.
Oh, it happened.
Yeah, that's all right. It's all right. I just shut them off. So there's a reason for all this.
Yeah.
Okay. So I, you know, but it seemed to me, wow, this is great. But a lot of people don't have the disposable income to buy a computer, you know, and to get online, you know. So there's a whole thing about, and I started looking around and seeing that, you know, yeah, there are people working on there, people creating in storefronts, you know, and basements in Harlem, creating computer centers called Playing to Win. And there's out in Rosebud, there's a little red schoolhouse, and you know, there are things happening, you know, and I felt like there was a possibility for a kind of show that was a little bit place-based comedy like Barney Miller or Cheers or something, and a little bit Sesame Street, where you can have, you know, different genres. You know, you can have Dizzy Gillespie talking about music, and then Cookie Monster comes in, Dizzy, I need some help, because, you know, and then you can cut to the letter 2, and, you know, I mean the number 2, or what, you know, multiple genre, and a kind of a Saturday Night Live. You can have, you know, well-known guest hosts that are not really taking a risk like they would if they were like the lead in the comedy pilot.
Right.
You know, they would only take a risk if they weren't weren't willing to risk,
Right.
that would be, but at the same time, I know everybody that gets visible then has these different things that come to them that connect with, and how do they help share those stories, and where those different things might actually overlap with what their missions are and what their visions are. So I had this idea for a show. I was way ahead. The networks were nowhere near ready to do it. I had no idea how to produce or even pitch something, but it seemed like there was that possibility, and I poured myself into it. And I spent time in Washington because I could meet with the Secretary of Education and so on, with all the community technology people and stuff. But one of the first things I did was I reached out to Chet Cooper, who I had met because he had arranged two things that I participated in. One was to do something at the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
Which I actually did a long poem because I didn't have a comedy bit. And then the other was a wheelchair basketball celebrity game in Beverly Hills somewhere, where we played on wheelchairs against guys in wheelchairs. And of course we got cream, but Chet and I'm sure everybody know, but if they don't, Chet was the publisher of and editor and creator of Ability Magazine.
Yes.
And so we had an affinity, I was telling your sense of humor is your biggest disability, because he has just a wonderful way to go with humor.
He's amazing.
Sometimes puns, but sometimes right at a moment when the whole moment with everybody kind of needs someone to lighten it up a bit, But his commitment is so, and I said, who knows more about getting people access to anything than this community of people who now we have curb cuts and big stalls that, if you're a dad with a toddler, you're really glad to have that big stall. You can put your packages over there, and there you don't have to worry about them following the wrong pair of pants out into the mall, sort of thing, So just a lot of things, and we started doing a lot of events together and parks, so that's how we met through Chet.
Right. Yeah. And well, I want to bring something up. We have a few.
I'm done with my core dump. Thank you.
No, I love it, and I want to continue. I swear, I could stay on here for several hours with you because your story. I just want to sit and listen and take it in. We do have a couple of people who are joining today.
Cool.
From Meet the Biz, and they'll come on for a little while. They'll ask some questions, and we'll, they might go back, or we'll see. But
hopefully we'll all get talking.
We'll all get talking. We'll just see where the river takes us.